Hi guys, how's it going? Today I originally wanted to do a Q&A session for this video, but then I thought maybe I should wait till I have 100 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe below and click the notification bell. But on the other day, I had my Instagram story and I asked if you guys have any questions for me, and one of you guys actually asked me how I learned how to pronounce words and how to speak like natives essentially. So I thought I could actually make a whole video on that question. So let's get into it. Believe it or not, learning languages actually have to start when you're young. And because I have both experiences learning a foreign language when I was a kid, like when I was in kindergarten at 3 years old, and learning another foreign language at 15, around 14, 15 years old, I actually believe that it is a lot easier to learn a foreign language and absorb its essence when I was young at 3 years old than I was at 15 years old. One thing that I started learning as a kid that helped me a lot with pronouncing words like a local or like a native speaker is phonics. Phonics is a method of teaching alphabetic language, like English, of course, and many other languages in the world. It demonstrates the relationship between the writing system and the sound that you make when you're speaking the language. And in English, you can have certain sounds associated with certain alphabets or combinations of letters. The same letter or same letter combinations don't always sound the same. For example, with 8 and might, they all have the same spelling at the end, it's just the first letter that is different. For 8, it is E-I-G-H-T, so the word starts with the vowel E, whereas for might, it is M-I-G-H-T, it starts with the consonant M. So they all have similar spelling, which is I-G-H-T at the end, but then with a different first letter, it makes the two words sound differently. So learning phonics actually help you with certain rules of how the words sound like, so that when you learn a new word, like a new vocabulary, you will be able to predict how it sounds like. Although in English it's not always the case, sometimes you won't know how a word is sounded like, and there are no accents like other Latin-rooted languages, for example Spanish. In Spanish you have accents so that you know how the intonation is like for a certain word, whereas for English it's more like a guessing game because you don't have any indicators of how the word is supposed to sound like. You don't know the intonations of the word. But nonetheless, learning phonics is still fundamental in my opinion to pronounce like a native or speak like natives. I also have years of acting experience in the musical theatre. I started performing on stage since I was 10 years old, and as an actor on stage you will have to pronounce the words very clearly and without error. To deliver the script perfectly, you will have to put in a lot of time and effort into correcting all your pronunciation. I remember when I was preparing for a leading role in a musical production, I had a teacher correcting my pronunciation for every single word in the script for 2 hours straight, or even more than that. And I am still grateful to this day because she took in her time and effort to teaching me and correcting my pronunciation, that even to this day I can still hear how people pronounce words and I can imitate it, because I don't know, I just got that ability from that. I think it's really helpful for me to actually sit down with a person who can dissect every single word, how it's supposed to sound like, how native speakers actually pronounce the word. I would suggest any of you to sit down with someone and actually imitate their pronunciation. It's actually fascinating to me how a lot of people grew up with the wrong pronunciation because that's how they're taught and their teacher never corrected them. It hinders your learning curves and it hinders your ability to absorb the correct information because you were not taught the correct way. That I do see people struggling with adapting to a local accent or speaking like a native and pronouncing words in a native way. Apart from learning phonics from a young age and having a very patient teacher to correct all my pronunciation in English, I also have to thank my Australian friends who actually helped me with my pronunciation.
Sometimes when I say a word incorrectly, they will correct me.
Listening to native speakers in various media can actually benefit you a lot in pronouncing English words like a native speaker. Because when you're watching an English movie or listening to an English podcast or like a comedy show, whatever that interests you, not only can you pay attention to the way they speak, including the pronunciation, the intonation, even the rhythm is very important, but also you can pay attention to the word of choice, the sentence structure, and even new concepts that you've never really thought of expressing yourself in. When you're watching something that is funny and lighthearted, you can learn a lot of the slangs that people use as a native speaker. But when you're watching something that is quite educational, you learn some words that are quite technical. That way you can be more expressive in the language that you use, because the more words you know, the more accurate you can express yourself in. And I think that's a really powerful tool to use. Oh my god, but I'm going on such a tangent right now. This video is supposed to be about pronunciation, but I've been talking about vocabulary. Maybe I should make a separate video on vocabulary. Yeah, comment below if you want to have a separate video on vocabulary. How do you learn all this vocabulary, or how do you memorize this vocabulary? So back to the topic. Additionally, what you can do is to converse with native speakers, because when you're talking to them, you can pick up their accent, you can pick up their pronunciation, and they will correct you if you're friends with them, because some people might feel like they're not being polite when they're correcting your pronunciation. But yeah, like you also can tell them, you know, I am learning this language and please correct me if I said anything wrong, and I won't be offended if you do so. So that way your friends know that they can openly correct you. Sometimes it happens to me as well.
I just don't know how that place is pronounced.
You know, I would just pronounce it anyway, and then my friends will correct me. But yeah, it happens sometimes, and it's okay to learn along the way. If you're a little bit more timid than me, you can just ask people, I'm sorry, how do you pronounce this word? And then they will teach you how to pronounce it, and then you can memorize it. And if you make the mistakes again, don't worry, just maybe people will correct you, maybe they won't, but when you hear people using that word, you'll be like, oh, so that's the word, that's how it's supposed to sound like. Or finally, if you're in an environment that doesn't have a lot of native speakers around, what I did was I actually specifically talked to my friend in English, like one of my friends. I learned Spanish at school, and he learned Japanese at school. We are very passionate about learning languages, and we actually decided to, you know, speak in English with each other, and that way we can learn from each other, and maybe we can practice it more often than we would otherwise. In my own experience, it takes a lot of practice for you to be fluent in a foreign language. In order to pronounce words and speak like local, to, you know, have the oral fluency that you desire, you definitely have to speak more often and encourage yourself to open up to the experience of speaking to native speakers. Now that I have shared my experience of how I learn how to pronounce words and how to improve my oral fluency, I really want to know your struggles and maybe your achievements. Let me know your struggles and the methods you use into improving your pronunciation down below in the comment section. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video and share it to your friends. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos. Don't forget to follow me on my Instagram at rainy.english. And if you want to support me monetarily, you can do so by pledging as a patron on my Patreon page, Rainy English. That's it for today. Bye!